The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
And I am back from a couple of vacation days, but we're still in the midst of vacation season, so I'm going to be out all next week. But we should start rolling second week of August, and football season, aside from a couple of days here and there, I'm good for the rest of the year. So it's a time to take off. It just is. There's things going on. There's training camp stuff to talk about, development in the Terry McLaurin story from yesterday, which we will get to. Tom Boswell is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We'll play some of his speech coming up in the 10 o'clock hour, and an honor for Santana Moss, who's going to go into the Ring of Honor when the Commanders play their first game on September the 7th. You know, they've caught up with a lot of the legends from the Joe Gibbs era, like retiring Darrell Green's number last year. They retired Sonny Jurgensen's a couple of years ago. There are more to come. I think Charlie Taylor's number has to be retired. John Riggins, obviously, and I even think Larry Brown, who's not in the Hall of Fame and probably won't get there. But this is a nice honor for Santana. He talked about it yesterday. Surprised, too. Was surprised while he was actually doing a show that is connected to the Commanders. So we will get to that. The development yesterday, I don't think it's earth-shattering. I don't think it's cause for a big celebration, but it's a positive. And this is how Dan Quinn opened up his news conference.
Terry McLaurin has reported, and we're very happy about that. He'll start the training camp on PUP for his ankle. So on the business side, AP and the guys are still working hard with Terry and his rep on the business side of things. So while on PUP, just like we do with the other guys, he'll be working with the trainers, to get back as soon as he can. So same scenario like Sam Cosmi onto the side, working there. So wanted to give you the update, and glad to open up with questions for you guys to get rolling.
Well, first of all, how good for you is it that he's even here?
It was great, and I'm really pumped that he's here, man. He's such an awesome competitor. We had a chance to spend some time together yesterday, so yeah, it was great to see him.
What do you know about the ankle injury, the severity, and when he's okay, will he participate in practices?
We don't know much today, John. I'll have some more follow-up. The medical side and them doing the assessments and see where he's at. So we'll put a better timeline together once, he kind of goes through, see where he feels at. And the one thing that we know, we have a really good process for this. Like we had said it last year, if you remember, like protecting the player is protect the team. And so we follow it, we believe in it, and we also know that it works. A return to play and what that looks like. Sometimes it's just a short time, sometimes it's longer. So once we get all the information, we'll put the whole plan in place for him, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, ankle injury. Is this strictly kosher? I wonder about that. Does the league investigate this? Now, this is what used to happen back in the old days. They were able to hide Mark Rippon on injured reserve for 2 years so he could learn how to play in the NFL. I think 1 year was a knee injury, and you could probably find some type of knee issue with almost everybody who's ever played football, so that wasn't hard. Maybe it was Stan Humphries who had the rare blood disease, which suddenly went away after a year on IR. So I don't know exactly how they're doing things here, but they have put him on the physically unable to perform list because of an ankle injury, which they say dates back to last year. The whole off season, I didn't hear anything about an ankle injury. Did you? Well, now they have an ankle injury, which conveniently, I think, places him on the physically unable to perform list. Now, he's rung up $200,000 in fines by not showing up. So I think it was in his best interest to stop the cash gusher of fines and stop that. He also supposedly owes $100,000 for skipping minicamp. That could all come out in the wash in the contract. Who knows? But there is no contract extension. And right now there's a Terry McLaurin in camp, technically with an injury, but more like holding in. This is a new term in the NFL. Like years ago, I never heard things like wide receiver room or quarterback room. That's a new term. And holding in means you show up, but you don't participate in any drills. Now, is he not participating because he doesn't have a contract extension? or is he not participating because he actually has an ankle injury? Nikki Jhabvala, who is a journalist, who, by the way, and this is the state of media these days, yesterday Nikki Jhabvala was working for the Washington Post. Today she announced that she's working for The Athletic. Either way, she's been covering the team for a number of years now. I think even going back to the start of the Ron Rivera era, and of course was here last year with Dan Quinn. So she knows him, he knows her, and this was investigative work by Nikki finding out, okay, ankle injury. What exactly are we talking about here?
We knew, at the end of last season, the ankle was something that, he was dealing with as it goes. So it's not so uncommon that lingers into the off season. Yeah.
Okay, so this is something that happened during the season and he's still dealing with. Okay.
The last season. Yeah, okay. Towards the end of last season. So, so that's not that uncommon, where it can, linger through where it's at. So that's where it's at. And as far as like communication, yes, because part of the off season being here, so I try to keep up with as many guys as I can. When the newer players get here, I'm starting on them first, as we're getting there. But Terry's easy to communicate with.
Your level of concern with the ankle, is this just more precaution, or is it, he's really got to
I don't know yet.
Okay.
And once they go kind of put the process together for what that rehab will look like, I'll have a better sense. I just know, hey man, protect the player is protecting the team. So let's put the plan in place, and then we'll attack it from there.
Okay, so he's doing a little dance here. And that's his job. Understandable. He can't say, well, we didn't really want him standing around healthy and watching, so we came up with this ankle injury, which is, I think, what happened here. Because, again, you didn't hear a thing about ankle injury in the offseason. Now, all of a sudden, he reports late. I go, oh, yeah, he's not really ready to practice. Okay. As far as the attitude of Terry while this is going on. Now, remember, it was it a week ago? No, it was almost 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Time's flying. Wow. Where he had that news conference at Eastern Motors where he said he was disappointed where things were, that his agent hadn't talked to the team in a month, and he was frustrated and didn't rule out the possibility of playing someplace else, didn't demand a trade, but clearly was unhappy. This was Quinn asked the question about his conversation with Terry and where his head is at.
He seemed very much like himself. Terry's always a serious competitor, but a pro's pro in a lot of respects, Dave, that he's just handles things in such a right way. I wanted to, really, I was checking in with the man, the other side of things are there, but to make sure in the midst of all that, just, the joy of here, teammates, togetherness, and he's built a lot, with the teammates here. And so I think that's what, people like Bobby and others were probably referencing and talking about him. Hey, that's his side of things. They know him as the teammate, and that's where the love is for them.
For those of us that don't marinate in PUP rules, what can he do and not do while he's on PUP?
So PUP is no team, no walkthroughs, no practices. It's really a focus of you count on the roster limit, but you're in let's call it like a rehab mode, to get everything ready. You can push that training to get there, but it's a kind of a build-up to get back to play.
I see. So very convenient. So just let's say that they work out a contract with McLaurin today, and they're on the practice field tomorrow. I got to believe that ankle is suddenly healed. Oh, I'm healed. I'm healed. I'm healed. Yeah, money will do that. But, okay, that's where we are now with Terry McLaurin. He's there, not working out, working with the trainers on the side, not going through walkthroughs. How much strain would a walkthrough create on his ankle? I don't know. But that's where we are right now. Now, McLaurin did go out on the field yesterday, and just to show you how much he's loved by the fan base, as Jaden Daniels was getting ready to do a sit-down with ESPN, they were out there yesterday, Hannah Storm and Jay Harris, and they were talking to Quinn and a bunch of players. So this was kind of Commander's Day for ESPN out there. This was as Jaden was sitting down. Now, you'd think, he's up there on a podium, everybody can see him, that the fans are going to start chanting Jaden after the year he had. Oh, no.
Terry! Why are you stirring them up, man?
I was
trying to do a baseball highlight.
The man walked out.
Yeah, so, that was Jaden pumping up the crowd to say, yeah, Terry, let's get this done. But Terry did work out on the side, and then, as you would expect, he went over and he signed autographs for the fans, was out there for like 30 minutes doing that. And then he said to the fans at one point, my beef is not with y'all. I love y'all. And each fan received eye contact. How you doing? Thanks for coming. I mean, again, on and off the field, he is everything you want in a player. But, again, no contract. They did get some comments from McLaurin walking off the field. The team did not set up a news conference because they didn't want to go through the Eastern Motors thing again where he rehashes his feelings on the contract and so forth. But reporters did get him for about 40 seconds as he was walking off the field after practice.
What's it mean for them just being so excited to see it?
Man, it's unbelievable. That's the part that gives you joy. Like, you kind of lose sight of some things sometimes when the business gets involved, but I never lost sight of the way they supported me and the way that I pour into them and the way they poured into me. So at the end of the day, it's business, but it has nothing to do with them. And any chance I could come out here, do what I got to do in there, but come out and show them my support and how much I love them, I'm going to always do that. I've always been that way.
To watch them on the field.
Oh, man, talking about yeah, man, it's tough. But, it's the business right now and just trying to take things day by day.
What'd your teammates say today?
I'm here.
He's there, not working out. The other thing about this, and if you talk to people who have, worked out contracts before, front office people, even coaches, they will tell you that the chance of injury increases significantly if they hold out. And while Terry McLaurin obviously keeps himself in shape, in fact, when he did not report last week, they found him going into a yoga studio. So I'm sure that he's in great shape, but he's not in football shape. He's not running routes. Maybe on his own he is, but he's not doing it with the rest of the team. And the other fear, and I think this is part of the reason that he's not signed, is he turns 30 years old in September. He's just over a month away from turning 30. Numbers decrease at that point. I would also believe that chance of injury would increase because of that. Now, he was saying last week or the week before at this news conference he had that he has not missed a game in 5 years, which is true. Yeah, he does keep himself in shape, and the best ability is availability, and he's been that. But, I look at both sides of this, and the emotional side says, oh, you got to be kidding me. This is exactly the type of player that they want to take care of. This is exactly the kind of person that you want to have in your locker room. This is exactly the kind of player that you want to show the rest of the team that if you perform and are a good soldier and a leader, that you will get rewarded. But they haven't done that. And in the old days, Dan Snyder would have stepped in and said, oh, here, we're going to pay you. We're going to make you the highest paid receiver in the league, and undercut whoever was running the team, whether it was a general manager or whether it was the coach-centric operation with Ron Rivera. How did that work out? But we don't have that here. So Josh Harris, as he said when he took over as owner, he's going to hire good people and he's going to let them do their job. So I imagine the conversation that's going on with Adam Peters is, what are we doing now with Terry McLaurin? And he's probably saying to Josh Harris, yeah, we're working to get him signed, but we're not going to blow everything out of place just so we can get this guy in on time. We'll eventually get this done. Or, even if they play hardball with Terry, and I don't think this is going to happen, worst case scenario, he comes in, he has a terrific year, they franchise him. And that franchise tag means that they're only committed to him for one more year. Now, could he hold out and say, I'm not signing the franchise tag? Yes, he could. That doesn't seem to be his nature. But we also didn't think that he'd necessarily skip minicamp because he is under contract this year. So it's a ticklish situation, but I also understand the business side of this, and I understand that they're finally running this team fiscally responsibly, which had not happened in a quarter of a century. Where Dan Snyder thought he was winning by overpaying players. And you would have players who would come in looking for $10 million contracts, and Snyder would offer $13 million so they wouldn't go anyplace else. The classic story is Adam Archuleta, who's one of the, Hainsworth blows free agent busts out of the water, but prior to Hainsworth was one of their bigger busts. And you remember this, that he had played with the St. Louis Rams with Lovie Smith as the defensive coordinator. And so Archuleta got a call from Lovie and said, I'd like to sign you with the Chicago Bears. That's where, of course, he went and took a team to a Super Bowl. Archuleta was very interested in going to Chicago and playing for Lovie Smith, but his agent said, okay, that's fine, but just make a stop in Washington. The Bears were going to offer him $6 million. Archuleta got offered $10 million here. Turned out he was terrible. By the middle of that season, he was only playing on a couple of special teams. You couldn't even put him on the field. He was awful. And that's the way they used to do business. So, yes, on one hand, it seems crazy that Terry McLaurin is now in day 5, or second week anyway, of a holdout. And on the other hand, it seems somewhat smart to me anyway that the team is doing the right financial thing and not necessarily giving him and his agent what he wants. And they're also looking at 2 years down the road when they're going to have to pay Jaden Daniels, and God knows what that's going to be. And you know that his mother is his agent. And the one thing that an agent does, because I had an agent for a while, the most important thing that they do is they listen to management trash you so you don't have to hear it, and they take that into account, and then they work out the best contract that they can. So is Adam Peters and whoever else is involved in negotiations in 2 years going to sit across from Jaden Daniels' mom, assuming he has seasons like the one he just had, and say, yeah, he's really not that good, Mom? Good luck with that. All right, coming up, Jason Garrett, former Cowboys coach. Couple of thoughts, including what the hell Jerry Jones is doing in not signing Micah Parsons to a long-term contract. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So while we have the Terry McLaurin situation here, he's holding in camp for the Commanders and placed on the physically unable to perform list with, I think, a wink injury, an ankle injury. But anyway, that's the status. He's there. You've also got a holding in situation with the Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons, who is also up for a contract extension. And so far, Cowboys haven't paid him. Out on the practice field yesterday, the fans were yelling, "Pay Micah." And they asked Jerry Jones about that. He said, I heard it light, but not compared to how I heard them say, pay Lamb. That would be last year with the C.D. Lamb negotiations. He says, there was a faint little sound compared to the way they were hollering last year, pay Lamb. Whoever's not in, you can count on a few hollering that. But that was as loud a chant last year on Lamb. So what he's saying is, yeah, they were really yelling loud for Lamb last year. Now they're kind of meekly yelling for Micah Parsons. Okay, maybe so. He's a defensive player, not an offensive player, if that makes any difference. Stephen Jones, his son, who's the executive vice president, but really doesn't have any power. It's all Jerry. He said the Cowboys would keep all Parsons discussions in-house, but yes, he heard the fans. He says, doesn't change anything. We want to pay Micah too. He's got to want to be paid too. Well, he does want to be paid. And they haven't paid him yet. So what is Jerry doing? And why does he drag these things out, ultimately paying more than if he would have paid early on in the process? Jason Garrett worked for him as a head coach for 10 years. He played for the Cowboys when Jones was the owner. He was on the Dan Patrick Show last week with kind of an analysis of what the hell Jerry's doing.
You know, the salary cap is going up. And when you have players on your team that you believe are cornerstone players, you know, my philosophy, my thought was always, let's sign these guys now. The price is only getting higher. You know, a few years ago when Kansas City signed Patrick Mahomes to that, whatever it was, a $500 million contract, everybody was like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. You know, it's a bargain. It's a bargain now. They were ahead of it. They took a preemptive strike and it seemed aggressive at the time, but you know, they're getting that guy for what I would consider below market value. And, you know, Jerry has had a philosophy that he he likes to wait on these things. And unfortunately, when you wait, the price goes up. Myles Garrett signs, then TJ Watt signs, and all of a sudden Micah Parsons says, hey, I should be making that because my stats are this relative to them and all of that. So it's just something, it's an approach that he's taken for years. I was always an advocate of being ahead of it and making the preemptive strikes, assuming that you believe in the player, assuming that you think he is a cornerstone player for you. He represents everything you want in the organization, and he's extremely productive. So I got to believe they want Micah Parsons to be with them for a long time, and I would think that it's better to try to get it done sooner rather than later.
Okay, but Dan Orlovsky, Ross Tucker, in fact, Ross Tucker last hour, feel like Jerry loves the publicity that he gets with this, that, this is free advertising for the Cowboys, that SportsCenter is leading with Micah Parsons, that, he loves that. And you can almost become addicted to that. I don't know what role you think that plays in his negotiation game.
Well, he's a master marketer. I think we all know that. And his impact on the popularity of the NFL cannot be overstated. You and I both know his impact on TV deals in the 90s, his impact on marketing stadiums, and how that's made a lot of owners, a lot of coaches, a lot of players a hell of a lot of money for a lot of years. So he certainly gets that part of it. I don't think that's the driving motivation, because if it wasn't Micah Parsons, it would be something else with the Cowboys, right? ESPN always leads with the Cowboys, whatever the situation is. So I don't think that's a driving force necessarily for him. Maybe it's a byproduct of the approach he's taken, but he typically likes to wait on these things. He typically likes the player to come to the owner and sit down and talk and say, okay, how do we want to do this? He doesn't like to talk to agents necessarily about contracts. He likes to get to the point where Zach Martin or Tyron Smith or Zeke Elliott or Des Bryant, they sit down together and they figure it out. And that's not to say that the player goes in there uneducated, but Jerry just likes to have that individual relationship with the guy. And he's done that forever. He did it with Deion Sanders and Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin and all the guys back in the 90s. So it's just an approach that he takes. My concern is the more you wait, the more you pay.
But he knows that, though, Jason.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant businessman.
Yeah.
And we all say the same thing. It's going to cost you more. He waited for Dak, and, that was the first Sunday of the NFL season, got that deal done. So he knows, he's repeated this. He does this. That's what I just don't understand the logic of, I'm going to pay more money. Okay? He's going to sign Micah Parsons, right? He's going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL history. It's going to happen. He was going to sign Dak Prescott. He was going to sign CeeDee Lamb. I don't understand the logic here of a guy, who's a billionaire.
Yeah, maybe he thinks he's going to get a better deal the more he goes.
But he doesn't get a better deal.
Yeah, and maybe he wants to see more evidence. I'm just throwing those things out there, but I think you and I both know that it's probably better to get these guys signed earlier than later.
Unless, what Dan is saying is true, and I think it is, that he likes the attention of it. Remember, Jerry will always say he's general manager first, owner second. Well, if you're the owner, you don't get a lot of attention unless you do idiotic things like Dan Snyder. You get attention when the team wins, but you don't get the credit. And that's what's always eaten at Jerry. He had unbelievable early success where they won 3 Super Bowls in his first, 6 or 7 years as the owner, first 6 years, won back-to-back with Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy got all the credit for those. He forced Jimmy Johnson out because too much of the credit was going to Jimmy and not enough was going to Jerry, and he said, I could win with 500 other guys. And he brought in Barry Switzer, who was a terrible NFL coach. And Barry Switzer did win a Super Bowl in his second year, but it was with the team that Jimmy built. And people have said that over the years, and we're going back over 30 years on this. So this is Jerry living with this, and this is now keeping him in the spotlight of, oh, look, he's in contract negotiations, even though it's not working in his favor because he has to pay more money. But that's maybe what's driving a man who's 82 years old, and he likes the process. And like he says, he likes to sit down with the players. He likes that. Now, let me just tell you that, Micah, we think you're a fine player, but, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, I would think they're going to sign Micah Parsons. The other thing about the Cowboys is they like stars. They don't like stars to get away. Micah Parsons is, not probably, he is the best defensive player in the league right now. Jerry wants to have him. And I think that ultimately it'll get done, much like what's going on here with Terry McLaurin. I think for different reasons that's being dragged out. Parsons is young. McLaurin, relative to the NFL receivers, is old. And that's what's holding up the deal right now. And it's also going to be a third contract for Terry McLaurin. It's only the second contract for Micah Parsons. So that figures into it. More from Garrett. This is another interesting story that he tells here as we now have speculation that Nick Saban is going to come back as a coach next season, not this season, but the 2026 season, as an NFL coach, that he left college because of what it had become, where the only thing that mattered for players was how much money they were going to get in the NIL era and all that stuff. And he just said, nah, that's not me. I'm checking out. And who could blame him? 74 years old with 6 national titles, arguably the greatest college coach who ever lived. But, he may have an itch to get back in, as good as he was on television last year, and that he might get back to the NFL. So Garrett has a unique perspective on Nick Saban, not just as a coach, but as an NFL coach, because when Nick Saban became coach of the Miami Dolphins, his quarterback's coach was, in fact, Jason Garrett.
So I was with him in that NFL experience, and it was an amazing experience for me. I learned so much from him, and I'm eternally grateful for that. In the middle of it, I think he realized that in the NFL, you get one first-round pick a year. And then if you go to a place like Alabama, you can get 10. And if you get 10 one year and you win a national championship, you're going to get 12 the next year. And so he believes strongly in being relentless in recruiting and building, teams and knowing that at the college level, it can perpetuate itself. Where in the NFL, if you have success, it goes the other way. You pick later, you have to pay guys more, all that kind of stuff. So I would bet against that. If you're asking me, I say Coach Saban does not do that. I think he would do well. I believed he was going to do well in Miami before he took the Alabama job. But, Miss Terry is a very influential person in his life at this point. So, like he always says, I'm just going to go up to the lake. He's probably enjoying his time at ESPN and enjoying some time at the lake.
Okay, but were you there when they bring in Dante Culpepper and you bring in Drew Brees and the Dolphins decided to go with Culpepper and Brees, I guess, physically wasn't he was a question mark. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I was the quarterback coach at that time.
Did you make the decision that you said, let's go Culpepper over Brees?
No, it was an amazing experience on so many different levels. I could write a book about this. Drew Brees is something else. And, he was an amazing college player, as we all know. And initially in San Diego, had his struggles, but he started to emerge as the guy. And I think we saw that. And we're excited about it, but we were all in on Brees, and then ultimately there was a medical decision that said he's got a 75% tear of his rotator cuff, and he wants $8 million guaranteed, and we're not doing it. So it kind of became out of our hands. But he was so much fun to visit with. I'll never forget. We picked him up. We took a plane to New Orleans. We picked him up, brought him to Miami, and just had a hell of a time with him. And, it was one of those things where you have to respect the injury, but if you were betting on a guy to be able to overcome an injury, he's the guy that could do it. And obviously he was able to do it. He only threw for 80,000 yards after the surgery. So he was something else. And there was a good story about that. You know, we went to dinner with him, and Wayne Huizenga was the owner of the team. And I'll never forget it. You know, Wayne sat next to him and his wife at dinner. And I never forget him saying to me afterwards, you know, I'm out of the football evaluation business, but I'll tell you what, I'm betting on this guy. He's something else. And so for him to make that evaluation just based on visiting with Drew Brees tells you a lot about both those guys. And then we were there ultimately when we signed Dante, and Dante was an amazing player, but his movement was such a big part of his game. And after he had the knee injury, he really couldn't move, and it was harder for him to play the way he was capable of playing before. So obviously that didn't work out real well for any of us.
That's Jason Garrett, and it's probably one of the great what-if stories in the history of sports, that the Dolphins were concerned about Brees and the shoulder injury. And it was a significant shoulder injury. Dr. James Andrews, Dr. Beanie, did the surgery and said, we're not sure. It's experimental, but we'll hope for the best. And that didn't convince the Dolphins. They take Dante Culpepper instead, who, as Garrett mentioned, had a bad knee and didn't do very well with Nick Saban as the head coach. Brees goes to New Orleans, and the rest is history. Makes you wonder that if the Dolphins had a little more chutzpah, a little bigger stones, and said, we believe in Drew Brees, we're going to bring him in here, and we're going to roll the dice. And maybe he and Saban create magic along the lines of what Bill Belichick and Tom Brady did. You know, Brees, not quite Brady, but not that far behind. And maybe Nick Saban doesn't go to Alabama, and Alabama doesn't become Alabama with Nick Saban, and Saban doesn't go down in history as the greatest college coach of all time. Maybe he wins championships in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins. It's a crazy, crazy story, but in the end, I think it worked out pretty well for the New Orleans Saints, and it worked out for the University of Alabama. The team that it didn't work out well for was the Miami Dolphins, because they're still struggling to get back to a Super Bowl for the first time since when? Since Dan Marino took them there 40 years ago. Wow. So, yeah, been a long walk in the desert because of that. And if they'd have made the decision to bring in Brees. Now, to be fair to the Dolphins, it wasn't like they looked at Drew Brees and said, oh, man, before the shoulder injury, he was on his way to the Hall of Fame. Everybody knew that. Drew Brees was drafted in the second round, first pick of the second round in 1999. It was the year that Michael Vick went number 1 to the Atlanta Falcons. And Brees was not very good in his first few years with San Diego, which is why in 2004, so that would have been 5 years into his career, that they took Eli Manning with the first pick of the draft, ultimately traded him to the Giants for Phillip Rivers. So they brought in Phillip Rivers, and Rivers sat behind Brees, who finally found his footing in that 2004 season, right? Or 2003 season. That's what it was, 2003 or 2004, I guess. 2004 would have been the rookie year for Rivers. And then hurt his shoulder. I think it was the last game of the year. It was late in the season. So, if he doesn't hurt his shoulder, maybe San Diego goes, we shouldn't have gotten Rivers. Let's trade Rivers. We'll stick with Brees. All kinds of things hinge on one thing, on one injury. And that's, I guess that's the story of a lot of things that happen in sports. Coming up in the next hour, Jayden Daniels speaks, and Tom Boswell of the Washington Post getting an award from the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. I would call this, take it for what it's worth, but it is an interesting development. Grant Paulson posted this on Twitter 15 minutes ago. It's a picture of Terry McLaurin on the field in Ashburn talking with his agent, Buddy Baker. Could mean nothing, but the fact that Baker is in Ashburn today, I think, might be significant, that there could be ongoing conversations in person with Adam Peters. I think that's helpful rather than the telephone. And Terry McLaurin being in camp at all is significant. He did report yesterday stopping the flow of fines at like a couple of $100,000, and they're listing him on the physically unable to perform list right now, meaning that he can't participate in any of the walkthroughs or the practices or anything like that. They're working out in pads today. But he can work out with trainers on the side, and they'll assess. I believe that this ankle injury, which I guess carried over from last year, at least that's what Dan Quinn is saying, miraculously heals as soon as he has a contract. And, the clock is ticking. Today is, the 28th of July. They're going to play an exhibition game. I think it's a week from Saturday, right? They play the New England Patriots. A week from Saturday? Yeah, I think it is a week from Saturday against New England. So that's in play. But the watch continues, and the hope is that they get something done. Meantime, Jayden Daniels is saying all the right things. I'm sure in his heart of hearts he wants to say, "Gosh, let's get this guy signed for God's sakes." But that's not the case. He was on yesterday. They had the ESPN set out there with Jay Harris and Hannah Storm, and they were interviewing a bunch of players. They talked to Dan Quinn. I'll play some of that here in just a moment. But they talked to Jayden Daniels, and they talked to him about how he has been able to handle all that's come his way in a matter of a year. Remember, at this time last year, Jayden Daniels was battling it out to become the starting quarterback. He did not get the starting quarterback job until the end of camp when he beat out Marcus Mariota. So at this time last year, he wasn't the celebrated rookie of the year, the guy that is the chosen one, the one that the whole franchise's hopes rest on, that someone who will bring them out of the the horror of the Dan Snyder era, all that. And he's done this with the right attitude, and an attitude that he discussed with ESPN yesterday.
I think it's just the humility part, being grounded and never letting your ego, especially in the quarterback room. We always say check your egos at the door. And that's like the main thing that they heart, because everybody has egos. Everybody is selfish in their own ways. As human beings, that's just human nature. Right. But for us, it's like, okay, how can I just go out there and take that away from me, push the ego out the way, and how can I be able to grow and get better? Because I still got so much to learn, and I'm striving to be a perfect player. If people were perfect players, everybody play in this league.
Yeah, look, he has done things a lot differently than Robert Griffin III. There's comparisons, and take nothing away from the rookie year that Robert Griffin had. In some ways, it was better than Jayden Daniels, although the team went further with Daniels. They made it to the NFC Championship game. The career, really, that really was the beginning of the end there. Ended in that first playoff game against Seattle. So there's that. But just everything he does is just so different. He does not bring attention to himself. And it was other people who said, "Oh, yeah, Jayden Daniels, he's coming into the facility at 5 o'clock in the morning." You never heard that about RG3. And what they did with him was they said, well, it's going to take him a long time to learn how to play quarterback in the NFL, so let's develop a system here that's going to suit his skills relative to what he did in college when he won the Heisman at Baylor. And that's what they did with him. Daniels, whole different ballgame, and the humility has a lot to do with it. The other thing that was talked about in the offseason, pictures of his arms and his chest, how he looks bigger. He was very non-committal about that in his opening news conference. Jay Harris got a little bit more out of him on the practice field yesterday when Daniel said this.
How much physically stronger would you estimate you are at this point?
I don't even know. I just know I got stronger naturally over time. That's what everybody was telling me. You see the pictures, kind of crazy. Wow. But that just comes with natural and maturity.
True.
I guess just a tall, lanky kid. I put on a couple pounds, put on some muscle, and now everybody's trying to blow it up like I went from 185 to 250 or 235. I'm still the same type of person. I just put on a little bit more muscle.
Just for wear and tear throughout the season, that your...
Yeah. You got... they're on my team, but you got Von Miller, Daron Payne, got right. Frankie Louisville, Bobby Wagner running after you, so... I'm glad they don't have to tackle me, but I know I got to go up against some people this year that might be trying to get after me a little bit, so I got to be able to withstand some of those blows when it comes to taking a hit.
Yeah, like Von Miller, he's here now. He said you were a big reason that he came here. What's he brought to the Vibe here in Washington?
I mean, his resume speaks for itself. Ultimate respect.
True.
Him and Bobby Wagner will be wearing a gold jacket one day.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, just having him, he's been at the top of his career, won a Super Bowl, made plays and stuff like that. So just having him here and be able to pick his brain on how he tries to time up the snap count, how he's trying to maneuver rushes. I mean, he's been a big help for everybody.
And that's something that he gets a new teammate and wants to know, okay, how do you do it from your perspective so I can – counter that on the other side. Such a refreshing thing. As far as the extra weight goes, yeah, it's probably going to help him. But remember this, Lamar Jackson got bigger. I think played maybe 235, something like that. And last year played at 210, dropped 20, 25 pounds and felt better. I don't think that you necessarily have to bulk up. The name of the game is speed in the NFL. It's elusiveness. It's knowing how to get hit. I remember talking to Phil Simms about this years ago, that he equated it to being like a skier, knowing how to fall. And Simms was not elusive in this way. He could run a little bit, but nothing like Jayden Daniels. And he said that, he could feel the rush from the backside. He got hurt a lot early in his career. And as things went along and, culminated by that great Super Bowl that he had against Denver, where he was, 21 of 22 or 22 of 23, something like that, he managed to understand, what you have to do to protect yourself. And I think that's the main thing. It's not necessarily bulking up because, look, if you're in the open field and you may be bigger and stronger, doesn't mean you want to take on a 260-pound linebacker or a 310-pound defensive end. No, you don't want to do that. It's being able to protect yourself, and a little bit more muscle helps. But I think he's right. You don't really need to bulk up for that. More on Von Miller. This was Dan Quinn when he sat down on the set with Hannah Storm and Jay Harris, and the signing process for Miller in the offseason.
Obviously coached against him. I've known him, and I was just so impressed by him through the years, the Pass Rush Summit. Like, here's a player that is helping others get better. Like, that's a commander. That's honestly, that's a warrior mindset. I just, from a distance in the walkthrough tonight, I saw Wagner and Miller, just the two of them together. I don't know what they were talking about, but somebody was getting better. That's how, these two guys are different, and they have rare traits and experiences that they can pass on. They're not here to coach, they're not here.
Right.
But there is some things that they have to share, to help others get better. Like, we need their play, but the older versions of Bobby and Vaughn can also add some things that the 25-year-old versions of them weren't able to add. And it's been really cool to have him here. We sat down and started talking at the restaurant, and 2 hours later, I felt like it was, do you guys want to order yet?
That's like when Jay and I go to dinner. It's the same way. And obviously, you were with Bobby, Legion of Boom. Both those guys are Super Bowl champs rolling in. You got another big name rolling in, a little bit of a younger guy in Deebo Samuel. Yeah. What does he bring to the table for Cliff's offense in terms of all the options and things that you're going to be able to do with Deebo?
I have enjoyed coaching him. Coaching against him, I knew how fast and how he could break tackles. What I didn't know was how much fun he is to coach.
Oh, really?
He is.
Yeah?
And he has got energy and juice. He challenges you. And it's so when you're on the distance, you think, man, this guy's an absolute dog. You just see him, you admire who he is. But then on the other side, it's there are some guys, man, that you absolutely love to coach because they're they can't get enough, they love practicing, in the meeting room. And so that's the thing that's how much I'm enjoying coaching him.
all summer, what can he do? And now that we were into practice, like the mad scientist is gone.
Oh,
now I can see the things that he's doing.
I can imagine Cliff's brain,
yes.
like, okay, here's what we could do with this, and then we got Eckler, we got all these yards after catch, we could do all these crazy things, and especially with Terry not here, I'm sure you can just, unload and have some time to work on some of that stuff as well.
You do have to explore, Hannah. You do.
Yeah,
and
right.
just because you try something, it doesn't mean you're going to do it. But, okay, that was good.
That's interesting.
That sometimes you tried it a few weeks, and it's too complicated. It's not good enough. You have to think of it from the lens of the player's helmet. Not from us watching on TV or a coach in the meeting room. What can they do? And I've learned that through the years. I've learned so much from players through the last 25 years. What if you thought about it this way? And so having the ability to listen to them and say, okay, let's try it that way, as opposed to, no, this is just how it is. Like, look at the playbook page. You have to be more fluid than that.
Yeah, the world has changed, not just football, but the days of Vince Lombardi and the Green Bay Power sweep, where he had his play and he just plugged in players to run it. Now, for many years, it was Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor, but that gave way to Donnie Anderson and Jim Grabowski and people like that, and the system never changed. Well, coaching in the 21st century is a lot different than that. And it's not, this is my play. These are my plays. These are things that have been tried and true. We're going to run at this. No, he looks at the skill set of the player and then says, how do we fit what we need to do with them? And that's probably a lot of things in the world this way. It used to be like the old player would say, okay, there's the wall. I'm going to run through it. And nowadays, the player will say, well, there's probably a better way. Maybe I can run around it. Maybe I can climb over it. And you go, okay, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it that way. And Quinn is probably one of those modern coaches that feels that. Do you remember Al Saunders? Al Saunders comes in. And I don't really even know why this happened this way, because Gibbs had found his footing. He came in 2004 after not coaching in the NFL since the 92 season. So was it 12, 13 years, whatever it was. So Gibbs comes in, and I remember talking to Joe Jacoby, who was out in camp. He goes, they're running the same thing we did. Well, that was in the 80s. And it soon became clear that the offense that Gibbs had brought back in 2004 was kind of obsolete from the last time he had run it in 1992. And he evolved. He didn't run the shotgun the first year. I remember Zabe and I did a radio show with him his first year, and he asked him about that. I'm going to put you in the shotgun. And, well, year two, they had the shotgun. They got much better. They won a playoff game, and it seemed like they hit their stride. He brings in Al Saunders and a 700-page playbook. And they were terrible that year. They went 6-10. And I think a lot of it was that there was this guy who had this playbook that he had used in other places. At one point, Al Saunders, I believe, had been head coach of the Chargers. And it was like, okay, no, these are the plays, and this is where, well, they have the personnel to do it. And that was the great genius of Gibbs. I'm going to tell this story for the millionth time, but you know this, that he comes in with the Air Coryell offense when he got here the first time in 1981, and he didn't have the personnel to do it. They were trying to do something that didn't fit what the players were able to do, and that's when he switched to the run-oriented offense and the 50 gut and the counter tray and all that stuff. And that's when Riggins had his big breakout in the playoffs in '82, and they became a run-based team for the rest of that period of time. And that's what Dan Quinn is telling you. You've got to run your system based on the kind of talent in the players that you have. And it's not necessarily the play that you want to run. And then you have to try it out. You have to try it a bunch of times and say, well, is this something we want to run in a game? Maybe, maybe not. And if you don't like it, get rid of it, because like the rocket screen, which Gibbs thought was a good idea in the Super Bowl against the Raiders and got returned for a touchdown by Jack Squarick, it's not the way to go. All right, Tom Boswell was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. He got a Lifetime Achievement Award, commitment to excellence over his career, and wrote baseball for the Washington Post for over 50 years, was at the paper for 52 years. He also wrote, it's funny, just thinking about him and that Super Bowl, Going into that Super Bowl against the Raiders, he wrote a column saying that the Redskins were going to win and join the great teams of all time as back-to-back champions, that their legacy would be cemented in that. And they wound up losing 38-9. He didn't always get it right, but when it came to baseball, he was one of the best and was awarded this weekend with the Baseball Writers Association Lifetime Achievement Award. And we'll hear some of his speech and some of the stories that he told coming up. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
With what's been happening in the federal government over the last few months, I think you could add that to the list of jobs that was once long and stable as unstable now. Used to be that you got a government job, you had a great career there, however long you wanted it to last, 35, 40 years, maybe 50 years, and you would retire with a pension. It doesn't work that way anymore. The radio business has really never been like that, at least as in the time that I've been in it. I managed to have one 25-year run, which I'm very proud of, but the rest of it has been, here and there. I've been here for 6 years. I'm proud of that. I didn't think that would necessarily last 6 years. I'd like to stay a little bit longer. But in the newspaper business, this used to happen, that you could get a job at a big paper and spend your whole career there and retire with a pension and get a cake and a ceremony on your way out the door. It doesn't work that way anymore. The newspapers are a lot different. They're going through a big upheaval. The Post just lost some really good people in the last few weeks. Cindy Boren took a buyout there. Dan Steinberg, remember he had this sports blog. He's now jumped to The Athletic, took the buyout with the Post after 24, 25 years. Nikki Jhabvala, who's been there 5 or 6 years, worked for the Post yesterday. Today she's working for The Athletic. She announced that on Twitter that he's made that move. So it's a fluid business, and it's a lot different than certainly when Shirley Povich joined the Washington Post as a kid and left 75 years later. He did retire, but didn't really retire, just kept writing columns. In fact, the last column that Shirley Povich wrote appeared the day after he died in 1998. And Tom Boswell, who came along in 1969 after he graduated from Amherst and joined the Post in what they used to call a copy boy and taking in high school scores and things like that, and then eventually became a general columnist with the Post, but known for his baseball work. And when he really started to cover baseball, we didn't have a team because a couple of years after he joined the Post, the Washington Senators left, and we didn't get the Nats here until 34 years later. So in the meantime, he became a national baseball writer and also became the Orioles beat writer. Even though we didn't have a team, a lot of people gravitated to the Orioles when they were playing at Memorial Stadium, and then, of course, won the World Series in 1983, so they were good. A lot of interest in them, great players like Eddie Murray and Cal Ripken and Jim Palmer, players like that. So he wrote about that, and then as a a columnist, local columnist for the Post, seemed to concentrate mainly on baseball and was very excited when we got a team back here, incredibly excited when they won the World Series in 2019, and he retired a couple of years later. And over the weekend, got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Baseball Hall of Fame for his work as a baseball writer. Thanked a lot of people and told some really good stories.
After all these years, baseball is about generations. We don't play the game. We replay the memories. And we replay them together. We are bound by affection to the family and the friends with whom we share the game. That's why tens of thousands of fans are flocking here right now. In that vein, I want to start by thanking Don Larson for his perfect game in 1956. Don Larson? What? Yes, because that's where my generational baseball story begins. I walked home from school at 8 years old one day. I walked in the front door of our house on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and I heard yelling and cheering coming from inside. My mother and my godfather were going crazy. They were jumping up and down, applauding and clapping. My godfather had been a minor league baseball player. I couldn't believe what was happening. They were watching our little black and white TV. Larson had just thrown the last pitch of the perfect game. Yogi Berra jumped into his arms, and I learned something big. A baseball game could make adults act like crazy children. Since then, I have been certain that there is more to sports, more power to move us, more links to bond us, more ways to console us, and more ways to show us our similarities, not our differences, than we know, and a lot more to write about, too. Next, I want to thank Roy Sievers, the American League home run champion in 1957. He was the perfect hometown hero for me. At age 9, my family took me to a department store where Sievers was giving autographs. It was night. I thought I knew where my hero would be. I mean, I thought I had telepathy. How could Roy Sievers not be where I thought he was? So, of course, I got lost. The department store started to close at 9 o'clock. The security guards found me in tears. They brought me to my family at 20 minutes past 9. Roy Sievers was gone, except Roy Sievers was not gone. He had stayed to sign 2 pictures for the little lost boy. Thanks to all the people of the game who understood what I wanted most from them, an education. Earl Weaver was my grad school professor. My friends knew that Earl was going to play a role here. It was hard to get Earl's attention, much less his respect. He even scared some of his ball players. Reggie Jackson would make a mistake in the field or on the bases and be afraid to come back into the dugout. He said, the little Weaver would have his foot on the top step, and as soon as you got there, he'd point that little finger at you and say, why? And you better have a good explanation. But this day, after 3 years on the beat, Earl and I were the last people in the dugout alone together. And he was chain smoking his unfiltered cigarettes. And he said, I smoke these damn Raleighs because with 50,000 coupons, they give you a brass coffin. There are probably a couple extra words in there since it was Earl. Then he looked up at me. It had been 3 years. And he looked at me seriously and he said, you're still here. And I took that as one of the best compliments I ever got. And I still choose to believe that he saw that he had identified a fellow baseball lifer. I have very few rules to live by, but Weaver gave me 2 of them. We reporters would ask Earl why what he said in March and spring training didn't match necessarily with what he was doing in May. He would look at us like bugs, and he would say, everything changes everything. Every rookie who gets hot, every veteran who collapses, every radical change, every injury changes the whole team and sends ripples through the whole team. You have to accept what has just happened, you have to analyze it, and you have to adapt to it. Earl also, when his strategies failed, often insisted he was correct anyway. He'd say, lose the right way, and he'd give us the bug look. And we'd, what? Lose the right way? In baseball, as one example, when the game's on the line, not every pitch of the game, but crisis moments, don't get beat with your 3rd best pitch. If you throw your 1st best pitch and it gets hit, or your 2nd best and it gets hit, that's life, that's baseball. But don't get beat with your 3rd best pitch. I can't tell you the times I've applied that to everyday life, and it came from Earl. I just hope my son Russell, who's in the audience today, doesn't say, I think I'll make everything changes everything Dad's epitaph. When Russ was 8 years old, I took him and his friend Drew to an Orioles game. As we were getting out of the car, I slammed the door and I slammed it right on Drew's finger. He bawled, Drew, what can I do for you? I'll do anything. The tears stopped and he said, can you get me Cal Ripken's autograph? He had good timing. This was 1995, the year he broke the record. Now, we're not supposed to do that. Not supposed to ask for autographs. But a few days later, I asked Cal, can you sign a ball for Drew? And Cal said, I'll leave it in my locker between games of the doubleheader. I was shocked. I'd known Cal since he was in the minor leagues. I said, he's blowing me off. He signs for everybody. There's a ball right here. He's not signing it. But so what? I came back between games of the doubleheader. There was a ball in Cal's locker. It wasn't just autographed. It was covered in writing, including a joke that his dad used when you were trying to get over injuries. Ripken had made it personal, and in a way that Drew would read it again and again and enjoy it more as he got older. Now, Drew is married, he has kids, he's an Orioles fan, and the ball is on the mantelpiece of his living room. Like Larson making grown-ups leap, or Seaver showing how a modest man becomes a hero by waiting for a lost child, the baseball generations, the legacy, turned again with that Cal ball.
That's Tom Boswell at the Baseball Hall of Fame over the weekend, getting essentially a Lifetime Achievement Award for his baseball writing. And when you think of people who have written about the game in the last 50, 60 years, he's right at the top of the list. Tim Kurkjian was a recipient of that award a few years ago. There are certain people who just love the game, and Tim and Tom are two of them, and Boswell getting that award. I think a lot of people who grew up in Washington grew up learning about the game of baseball from Tom Boswell. You know, Tom Boswell was writing national stories, as he said. He was traveling all over the world, covering baseball, went to Cuba, places World Series streak that started in 1975, which is a pretty good way to begin with the Carlton Fisk home run. So now he is a part of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and no one was more excited when the Nationals won the World Series in 2019, which would have been, I guess, exactly 50 years after he started to work at the Washington Post. So incredible how that symmetry works out. Got a little bit of an update on Terry McLaurin. He was walking off the practice field today. He was seen talking to his agent, so maybe that's a good sign. The agent is in Ashburn. Maybe they were working out the final details on a deal, but he was asked if the fact that he was there and the agent was there, does that improve the dialogue? And McLaurin said, taking it day by day. So he's not giving any answers, but he's shut off the fine machine for now. He is in camp, and that he is listed on the physically unable to perform list, meaning he can't participate in walkthroughs and things like that. But he's working with trainers off the field on what may or may not be a fully legitimate ankle injury. I think everybody plays with some type of pain, and if you do MRIs on many parts of the body, you'll find that there's some type of injury that they're working through. But keep your fingers crossed. This, I think, is a big week. If they don't get Terry McLaurin signed this week, wow, this could go for a while. But the fact that he's there, the fact that the agent is there, I think that might be a pretty good sign at this point. Anyway, Bram is coming up next. We'll continue on the Terry McLaurin watch. Maybe he's there tomorrow. Either way, I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.